I just called him dad my whole life. I didn't know that he wasn't my biological father. Around 12, they were like, "You know that your stepdad's not your father, right?" We're like shocked, like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "Yeah, he's my dad." And they're like, "No, you have like a dad and he really wants to see you and know you. You're in a maze, lost in a maze. Everyone else can see you lost in the maze." And they don't say like, "Hey, this is the exit," or guide you. They just talk to each other like, "Oh my gosh, she's gonna walk into that wall again. You
Yeah.
get out of this maze." And then everyone's like, "Well, like, duh, wasn't it obvious?" And it wasn't.
Hi, Chantel, and welcome to the Anti-Alienation Project. I'm so happy to have you here
Thank you.
and to learn more about your story.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. And even though it's like a harrowing story, I'm really actually happy to share. It's validating. You're very validating when you have other guests on, and you really know what's up. So I'm really happy that you're the one that's listening because,
Oh,
yeah, I'm,
thank
I know
thank
you get
you.
it.
Yeah, I do get it. And even though all of our stories have different events, it's the same effects, I find. First of all, I'm so sorry you've been through this. Would not wish it on my worst enemy. I'm curious if you remember life before the alienation.
So I was very young. The story includes my twin sister. We're very
Mhm.
close. So I have to kind of talk about her as well. But this is my history, my memories, so I'm not gonna speak on her behalf, but if she I'm just gonna say she was along with me on this. So, we were about 2 or 3 years old, and what was happening, her parents were quite young when they got married and had us, and I don't think that was really in the cards or the plan for them. My mom and dad were 17 when they had my sister and I, and I don't think that's what they would have chosen at that time in their life. I don't think it was the plan. But after finding out they were expecting twins, my mom was really like, "We're following through with this." So they stayed together, got married. We were like 1 years old at the wedding, I think. And shortly after that, my dad and his parents were moving to Ontario. So a few hours away from where we were born and where we were currently living with him and my mom. And my mom was supposed to move with him, from what I gather, from mostly my dad's side of the story, because my mom's side, she was the alienating parent, and uh, I find it hard to believe her side and her story because of gaslighting and things she told me that hasn't happened. So I'm taking kind of his word at this time in my life because we've reunited. So we moved, or he was moving for work with my grandparents, his parents. And he was very young. So it was like, yeah, we need a job. We need to raise our family. My mom agreed, yeah, let's go move out there with them, the girls. Let's raise the girls together. So he went ahead with my grandparents to kind of settle in, make some paychecks, I guess, and then she was going to join later with us. Somehow, something went off the plan. So I think my mom had it in her mind. What she had always told us was he was cheating, having an affair. There was another woman there, and it scared her. So she decided, we're not following through with this move. We're staying here. Now, it might have been my grandparents' influence because she was quite young, and then they were scared for us to all go. So that might have played into it, but no one will ever share or explain that. I'll never know. So I can just guess all I want. But basically, my mom just like said, no, this isn't happening. So my dad, for years, tried to reach out to us and stuff. But yeah, at 2 years old, between the ages of 2 or 3, that's when he was just out of our life. And there's no memories because we were so young. So actually, I was raised by my mom and my stepdad. And growing up, it was just known that my stepdad was, I just called him dad my whole life. I didn't know that he wasn't my biological father for a
Oh,
long
wow.
time.
Okay.
We would like walk through the store, and then people would be like, "Oh, your daughters look so much like you." And he'd be like, "Oh, thanks, they're not mine." And I thought, like, what a joke, like, because we're like little brats or something, and he doesn't want to take ownership.
Oh my
But
gosh.
no. And then I found out probably around the age of like between 12 to 13, things started to kind of piece together. We had family members that were actually on my biological father's side that stayed in contact with us for a while. So at some point, they broke the news to us, not when we were young, but yeah, around 12, they were like, "You know that your stepdad's not your father, right?" We're like shocked, like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "Yeah, he's my dad." And they're like, "No, you have like a dad and he really wants to see you and know you. Would you be okay if we sent some pictures of like your school photos or your photo, or can we take a picture of you in front of our fireplace?" And we were like, "Sure," but we were kind of like, "This is weird."
What was that
Um,
like? At such a precarious age. I remember being that
I
age
I
and
worried about my mom, like, what she would think, and I
you
was
worried about your
like,
mom?
yeah, I was like, "She's not gonna be happy about this." Like, I don't know, because she just kinda gatekeeping information. There were times where it was like, "If you see this area code pop up on, like, the phone display, do not answer it. It's a bad person." And we're like, "Okay." So we just, like, never answered the phone, and I felt like we were almost locked into a prison in our childhood.
You're 2 or 3, you said, and your mom decides there's something going on, she's made up her mind. Did she go collect you? And as far as you were or as far as you
So
know, and she brought you back to where she was living?
all I know is my dad said there was one trip we made on a plane out there with my mom, and then
Mm.
we came back, and we were supposed to then pack all our stuff after we came back home, like, to Winnipeg, and then go all the way back to Ontario again. So we flew out there to get a feel of what everything looked like, for her to be like, "Yep, this is, like, kosher, we're good, we're gonna move here." And they were married, and he was ready to provide, and like my grandparents on that side were just so in love with us and like so proud, like, and just so happy, and they wanted to support us and my mom any way that they could. Whereas I feel like my mom's parents just thought she was immature and that this was a bad idea and that we wouldn't be in a good, safe space or something. So something happened and she was just like, I'm keeping the girls, and that was it. And he didn't really know how to fight it. Like he was granted 50-50 and told he was allowed to see us, and he remarried. He's married to his third wife currently, but there was another woman in between, and they had 3 kids together, where
Mm.
he gained full custody of my 3 half siblings. So it was just like, okay, you have full custody of like my half siblings, but you don't have any rights to us or to be able to see us. But we didn't actually figure that out until we were about 16. Like he did try to connect with us, like he did through my aunt and uncle.
Did he know where you were living?
Yeah, he always had her address and phone number somehow, but through my aunt, I'm thinking, he just didn't want, like, my stepdad always threatened him. There was a big altercation at one point when they were young at some party, and I just think that, like, my dad being young and just all this stuff happening, he didn't have the tools or like the strength to piece it together or know or understand what was happening. He just probably thought maybe this is like in the best interest for my daughters or something. Like I don't know, but I know he suffered without us being a part of his life at all. Like there was never a
Yeah.
phone call, never a Christmas gift, never a visit like before the age of 3. Later when Facebook kind of came out and started coming into play, he did reach out and try to kind of reconnect and say like, "I'm your dad and I really would like to get to know you." And I think I was just really brainwashed by my mom, and I said some pretty mean things where it was like, "Well, you never paid child support. You've never made a chance, like an opportunity to spend time with us, or you never made plans to visit." Or he was like, "No, I definitely have. I bought like flight tickets and bus tickets, and I've tried to like come see you, and every single time your mom didn't want to meet or didn't want to follow through." He's like, "But I still have the tickets. I still kept them all for evidence,
You
kind of
kept
like
it?
to prove that he was like, "I did try." But he was like, "I would like to send you and your sister some phones," and we're, yeah, about 16, and of course, we're like, "Yeah, free cell phones and minutes, like, sure." And then did we use it to contact him? Not really, because we were just really at that time, like, "No, I'm uncertain. I don't know if he's, like, truly authentic." He's a complete stranger to us. And, like, I will give my stepdad credit in the fact that, like, oh, yeah, he was there, a father figure kind of, like, thrown at us in a way, but he paid for important stuff growing up, like sports or school fees and, like, whatever clothing and things you need growing up and shelter and provided, but I'm, like, not in a nurturing, gentle way. It was just a very abusive, neglectful childhood home. And so that also played into like my insecurities. Probably at that time I had no awareness that I was going to suffer. I was going to at some point in my life come up with really hard dark times through depression and needing real help and going into the depth of that. I didn't know that was going to be coming at that time. So I just kind of lived my life, thought this is like a terrible childhood. One day I'm going to break free. And I just never thought I'd puzzle or piece together what happened in the past and what's happening now and what will happen in my future. You're a kid. So I took the phone. I was like, yeah, I'm going to reach out and talk to you. And then a few years went by still with like brief no contact, like just a couple messages over Facebook.
Is it okay if we go back to the point where you figured out that your stepdad is not your biological dad? Because I can't
Sure.
imagine the layers of trauma that that must have caused. Like, especially at that age, you 12, 13, you said. What was
Yeah.
that like? And how did you survive that? How did that play
Uh,
a role? It seems like that must have been a huge betrayal.
I think that that really started this personality identity issue with me. Like, where am I from? Where do I belong to? What if there's like some history of disease or something? And like, I thought this young, like, I was a very wise child. I was very well beyond my age. Lots of people thought I was older when I'd run into them, but I read a lot. So I just had this like emotional self-awareness for a young age. And I was like, first of all, like, why would these people like my mom and my stepdad lie to me about something so serious for this long? So part of me was like, I don't believe it. So there was like a disbelief and having to work through that layer. And then there was like kind of a relief of like, I'm kind of glad I'm not related to this guy. He is not
Wow.
a nice person. And
Yeah.
I felt almost like this weight came off of me of like, oh, like, thank you that I'm not related to this, that in the future when I have kids, I'm not going to produce like something like that. Or I just like, it sounds so terrible, but in a
No, it
way I
makes
was like, but
sense.
then
Yeah.
like, but who is my dad? Who is he? And I just would fantasize all the time and piecemeal things over like conversations I would eavesdrop on. And I always loved doing that as a kid. My mom would just say like things like after I came up to her and was like, well, why like this? You're saying this man is our dad. At the end of the day, he truly did not give to our genetics, but is raising us like that. So I'm grateful. But who is our father? Oh, he's nobody. He's a sperm donor. He's a drug dealer. He's a drug addict. He's an alcoholic. All these negative, like really mean things. So I was just like, oh, like, okay, well, maybe I don't want to know him. Like, that's not a nice person. And why would you produce life with someone like that kind of? And I was just like hurt. Like, I felt terrible in my own skin, kind of
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
am I gonna be addicted? Am I gonna like be a terrible person when I'm older? Like he is, and it just really made me confused and then kind of start to shut down where I was like a really like outspoken little girl
Mhm.
and strong, and like I
Yeah.
remember in kindergarten a little boy saying like women or girls can't be firemen, and I was like it's firefighters and yeah we can, and I like ripped up his artwork and my kindergarten teacher was like, well Chantel, we can't do that. That's not like maybe you can communicate better. I was like, he's a liar. And then I just shut down and I
Yeah.
didn't really have friends and I didn't like speak up for myself anymore. And I just kind of went
Right.
into like a shell until 17 years old. I just did like the daily thing, went to school, and I avoided being home a lot at that time. I just stayed at the library a lot longer, volunteered anywhere I could, played every sport imaginable, and there was a track near my house, and I would just run, and I was a huge runner, and I was like, "I'm running away from life." I was like one of those very dramatic kids, like, wanting attention of, like, "Does anyone see me?" So, it was
Oh.
just like I was a weird kid, so I feel like it partly played into that, and then I just wanted to, like, never be around my family or home. That's what that made me do, and then just kind of be outside of myself, so I felt like I was very, disassociated almost, like, I
Mm.
don't wanna participate in reality, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't want to um, live here anymore with my parents. Like, I just thought, what if he's a kind man? What if he has like we lived in poverty. There was troubling times. My house was like my mom's a hoarder. It was just very messy and like cluttery. And so I was like, could I be somewhere else? Could we be in another country? Like she was talking about London, and I was like thinking across the pond, but no, Ontario. But I was like, maybe yeah, and then she said lawyer, and she was talking about her own lawyer, but I was like, "Is he a lawyer?" Like, she never told me about him, his career, what he looked like, I physically never saw him at all in person until I was 18 years old.
Okay. This is so your
A
story.
lot, it's a
Yes,
lot.
but not in a bad way. I have so many
Yeah.
questions. So I'm wondering, and if this is too personal, please, feel free to say, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
want to answer that. But I'm wondering, did you ever confront your mom? Did you ever ask her, why did you not tell me who my real dad was?
Oh, all the time, and to this day, it's kind of funny because there's even times where I'm like, okay, dad, like, my bio dad, you
Mhm.
call him sperm donor if that's what you're gonna call him, like, I'm not calling him that, but to you, sperm donor, whatever. Um, he said that you were married, and he showed us pictures, and
Mm.
we were there, and then also her mother, my grandma, said, "Yeah, they were married." She validated that for me, and then when I said that to my mom, she's like, "No, we were never married." So I'm like, I don't know if in her mind, she's just like, in my heart, I wasn't married to him, but I'm like, no, like legit on
So
paper
she's
and all.
denying the truth.
She denies our reality, our truth. Like
Yeah.
she doesn't want to go there. So funny enough, my twin sister and I, the first time we were ever on a plane was when we were babies to go see my dad for that one time with my mom. And the second time in our whole life we were on a plane together was last weekend. We've never been on a plane together and we were going on a plane to visit our father, and we just, like, we're like looked at each other like, "Have we ever been on a flight together?" Like, we've both flown all over. We're like, "I don't think so." And we're like, "That's so funny, like, how full circle this is." But when we were heading out there, she's like, "I didn't tell mom we were coming, did you?"
Mm.
And I was like, "Well, I just don't really tell her really much about anything that I do." So I'm like, "No, I didn't tell her, but I don't really talk to her as much, whereas my sister lives in the same town. She visits every, like, week and brings,
Mm.
I don't know, snacks and meat, and they watch TV shows together, and they hang out, and I'm just like, "That'd be a nightmare for me, but good for you, like, she needs that," and our
Yeah.
mom just had surgery as well, so it kind of was like this, like, "Ooh, if we tell her and break this news to her, like, how's that gonna affect her healing in a way?" Like, we just
Yeah.
didn't wanna cause her so much stress where she, like, ends up having a heart attack or something because of this news, but I'm like, that's how,
That's
like,
how deep it is. I can
can
relate to that
yeah,
so much, like
yeah,
being a child even or a teenager or even an adult and just knowing Like if she sees me with dad, or if I reach out to dad, or even if I look happy while with a dad, it's gonna hurt her. And I don't
Yeah.
want her to be hurt. And then I would realize it
Yeah.
consciously, like you guys are now, you know? And when you realize that you have to be in control of your parents' emotions all the time,
Yeah.
something changes. Also, sibling relationships, we don't have to talk about that because I know how difficult that is, especially because your sister
Mhm.
has her own story. But I do know that it's um the alienator wins by just destroying those relationships as
Yeah.
well. So I'm wondering about your story back when you're 16, and I think that's what you said. You're 16 when your
Mhm.
dad reached out. What was
Yeah.
what was that like? So I'm sure you were must have believed some lies about him at that point.
Mhm, mhm. I was quite nasty. Like, I have apologized to him, like, even, like, through a publicly Facebook post where I tagged him, and it was one of your videos with, like, comparing texts and then putting them into categories,
Oh.
and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I literally have said verbatim all of these things," and I was like, "Dad, I love you, and I'm sorry," and I was like, "I didn't," and he just is so good. He's like, "Oh, honey, honestly, how could you have known? Like, how," and
Uh,
he's like, "I would never hold any of this against you ever," and then when I saw him this weekend, my stepmom was just like, "You know what? Since you girls have been back in his life, well, it's been like probably 5 solid years we've really been back in each other's lives." She's like, "He has just been so happy and has turned so many things around, and he's doing so great in life." And she's like, "I'm just so happy and grateful to see that in him, and that he has finally, like, he was suffering so bad for so many years." So I was like, "Yeah, honestly, like, this is a horrible abusive thing, like a human rights issue. This is
absolutely.
deeper than," I'm like, "the health conditions
Yes.
he has, and, like, he has, like, an autoimmune condition, his
My dad
body's
too. My
attacking
dad
himself."
too.
Oh, no.
No, this
Because
happens.
it's
Did you develop
yeah.
any health issues too?
I have,
Me,
yeah, and
me
I've
too.
had really bad, yeah, like, symptoms and stuff, um, and even as a child, like, there was just every Christmas, I felt heavy, and I couldn't put a name to it, but I was like, "Something is missing," like, there, and I would always be drawn to the story of, like, reuniting families, or, like, the toy that got lost and came returned to its little toy owner, and and stuff like that. So I just, like, probably this was all gonna happen eventually, but it
Mhm.
was so crazy, like, to go so many years to be like, "I didn't even know this dude existed," and then to go few more years until even, like, any type of contact, and then to trust that and go into it. I wasn't mature enough, I didn't have the healing, I didn't have the understanding, and so I just, like, kind of bullied him like my mom in a way. I was like her mouthpiece, a tentacle off of her or something. Like, I just, it took a while to, I mean, I've always was against her in a lot of things, very defiant,
Yeah.
very the black sheep of the family. My sister and I still have, like, disagreements over events that occurred. She's like, "I don't remember that. That didn't," so I'm like, "Okay, cool, like, that's cool. Well, it happened. That's what I remember." So, and then, I just kind of, like, over time, I moved really young, far away, like, at 18, I got as far as I could out of that house and family.
I've noticed a lot of us have done as well, because I did that too. I
Yeah.
begged to go to boarding school, and then I was allowed to go to boarding school. Like, that's a common theme, wanting to get away early, or emancipating oneself even. So all this
Yeah.
that you're saying is just it's the common stuff.
Connects.
Was there any turning point or moment that really gave you the clarity to know that what was going on?
Okay, so the biggest thing was when it happened to me with my own children, my 2 daughters. Oh, I know, it's awful. I won't say too much about their dad, but he also went through parental alienation as a child. So when they say the statistics and the research that has been done around it, it's like 50-50. Well, like, that was bound to
Wow.
happen. he even had foresight of saying things in our marriage like, "What happened to my dad, I never want to happen to me and the girls." So, it was just like, why would that happen? I would never I was like, "I grew up without knowing my dad, why would I ever let my children grow up without knowing their dad?" And I was like, I mean, for the mo we know have known each other for a long time, so I was like, "You're a great dad," and then some health things came into play and, like, a tumor in his brain and some aneurysms and strokes and things like that just make a person not the same anymore. It's
Oh,
kind of like a Frankenstein
no.
thing, like, somebody took his brain, put in something else. A lot of this is fear-based for
Yes.
the targeted, the alienated all of that. I
Everyone.
feared everybody is like, "Ugh, don't say the wrong thing, don't do the wrong things. You're on eggshells, you're not being your authentic self," and that was making me really sick. And it's funny because in that marriage, he said, like, "We're not inviting your dad to our wedding. He doesn't need to be around for that because he was never a part of your life." And his dad at our wedding gave a speech saying, like, "I never knew my son growing up. We're just kind of getting to know each other now, but when he was 10 years old, his mom moved him so from Winnipeg to South Carolina, that's kind of far." And so he never got to talk or see his own dad. Now our daughters are experiencing that, and they are with him and he is gatekeeping that relationship, and I have no contact, and it's been like 2 years and 4 months or something like that
Oh my
now.
gosh, I'm so
So,
sorry.
it's in
I'm
the
so
courts, it's
sorry.
going down, but it is kind of crazy 'cause, when it started to happen, I, like, Googled, like, "Why can't I see my children?" and stuff like that. It was just so I'm like, "I've done nothing wrong," but all of a sudden, like, the term parental alienation
Yeah,
popped up the first time for me, and I didn't even have to read about it. The name in itself, I was like, "Bing, light bulb moment, like, here this is it. This is what is happening. This happened to me as a kid, happened to him as a kid, is happening to my daughters and me. This is wild." So, I just took few years, like, to really uncover what this is. So right now I'm still peeling back layers and layers, and there's things that come to me almost like weekly where it's just
mhm,
like, "Oh, I remember this when I was a kid," or "I remember this moment," or back in time, and then connecting it to now, and I just go like, "Oh, like, I totally forgot about or, like, locked it away or, like, childhood memories I never had before." So I feel like there's healing ultimately, and I just have so much, like, hope that the right thing is gonna work out eventually. It did for me and my dad, so I know my daughters, like, I know they know that I love them. I know that for sure. And I'll send them, like, little gifts in the mail. I'm afraid to put my name on them, but I take, like, pictures and selfies of me beside them, and then I send it. But my dad's sort of, like, doing things like that, like keeping the court documents so I could look at it, keeping any of the flights that he paid to try to visit and stuff. Any videos from when we were babies really helped. The biggest thing, the craziest thing that happened was when my sister and I were 18. The family, the aunt I'm talking about when we were young that had a connection to him, my cousin got married, so her daughter was
mhm.
getting married and asked my sister and I to be bridesmaids. So we were like, "Okay, sure, cool." Because the bride and her sister are also identical twins. So I was like, "Oh yeah, it'll be like a twin wedding. It'll be fun." And then people have something called a social. It's kind of like a fundraiser for a wedding, but you like get together, dance, have some drinks, whatever. And then that was the first time my dad showed up in person and I saw him like
In
physically and I was
person, that was the first
18.
time?
Yeah, 18 with my sister. We were all there. And, like, I took pictures kind of with everyone in the family that I had dreams about them. I could see their face, but I this was before I was, like, 2, and I was always like, "Who are these people I'm seeing all the time and dreaming about?" At the social, I was, like, talking to everyone, but, like, every photo, my dad's, like, lurking in the back because he didn't wanna, like, intrude. He was so, like, "I don't wanna push myself on to you
Oh,
guys. I don't wanna push you away." So he's, like, walking a very fine line and just gave us, like, a nice little hug, and then the night was kind of over. Well, my sister immediately, like, wanted more time and to hang out with him more and see him more. So It was kind of winter, a few months before the wedding that happened. Then he came back for the actual wedding in September. Yeah, so a few months after that social, and he wanted invited us to a dinner, but it was a day after the wedding.
Mhm.
So the wedding happened, and it literally felt like the wedding happened for us to reunite. It was so bizarre. I was like, "Is this just, like, put on for my sister?" And obviously it was not. That's very, like, logistical, but it just really felt that way. Like, I saw my grandparents, aunts, uncle, like, everybody,
So
my half siblings, like, people I've never met. It was
you
the
were
first time
meeting
meeting
everybody for the first time,
for
essentially?
the first time in person, yeah. And then it was like a time hop the next day because we went over for dinner to another aunt's house, and everyone came. And then we were just sitting around this big TV, and they put these home videos, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is." I was bawling, like, it was just so hard because it was like these people loved us. We were robbed of this time and memories, and, like, who has died during this time that we never got to connect to, like, and that's 18 years.
When you met all of your family, your dad, your grandparents, aunts, uncles, I mean, was it like just coming home? It felt
Yeah,
peaceful and right? Or were you anxious?
yeah.
Like, what was that like?
First, very emotional, very overwhelming in a very beautiful way, like, just like, this has been my dream. This is what I prayed for since I was, like, probably 4.
Mm,
Just like, I always had this vision of, like, I wanna live with my dad, my grandma, my aunt, my uncle, my mom, my siblings, like, I wanted everyone to live under one roof and be together always, and being under that one roof, watching those videos, like, I'm like, "I know that was me when I was a baby. I know who, and I know now I can see these people today and see
mm,
who they were then." And it just really, like, connected. It was like, boom, like, all these fireworks going off in my mind of, like, it was profound healing instantly for
mm.
that reconnection, and that was so key. And then it was like I had to run away. I, like, ran out of the room. I was like, "'Cause I don't want people to see me. I'm so emotional. I'm so, like, I didn't wanna scare them or something like that. I'm
Yeah,
too much because because now I'm like, they're back, they're here, and I
mm,
don't want to push them because I was always told,
yeah.
don't cry, be quiet. You like it was a house of like, don't be heard, don't be seen, and you're fine. You can get by. But if you draw on attention, it was not a good thing. So
Mhm.
I didn't want to draw attention in that moment. So I feel like I don't know if I made anyone like worried that I didn't love them or something, or that I was running away from some truth. But it was like, okay, they're safe. They really do love us. They really did want this relationship. And then I remember one of my half sisters saying, like, my dad would put our photos at the dinner table having dinner sometimes. Like we were there having and I was
Oh
just
my
like,
gosh.
"Oh, that
Oh
is just
my
so
gosh.
touching," and, like, that makes me feel so loved and, like, just shocked because we were so unloved, like, we were in such an unloving situation, an unfit situation, and to me, I always thought, like, "Well, he must have really been bad if the courts," but
Mm.
it doesn't work that way, like, it just the courts are not like that, so I've learned that through my own experience too.
You're 18 years old. You have this incredible healing experience. You're getting to know your dad. Did things just go up from there with your dad? And then what was the effect on your relationship with your mom?
It was going up from there, so I, immediately, like, while my dad was flying back, like, home
Mhm.
from the wedding, he invited my us to go, but I had, school starting for college, like, he wanted me to come, and I was like, "I start in 2 weeks, like, I can't, I have to prepare and whatever," but my sister went for 2 whole months
Wow.
and immediately, like, just went with it. My mom was just like, "Where is she going?" and, like, "What's happening?" Like, it was a whole explosion thing, and since I stayed home, like, I was kind of her grounding, like, rock person, I guess, and held her, like, "It's gonna be fine, and she's safe," and well, like, I don't know, at 3 in the morning, my mom called him one night and was, like, screaming and woke up the whole household, and was just saying awful things. Like, I can't even repeat it, but I was like, oh my gosh, like she just thought my sister was getting into some serious trouble, and it wasn't like that at all, and nothing was happening. She was just so delusional, made this up in her anxiety. I will say she's also like on some spectrum of schizophrenia. So she was always very cuckoo, as I would say growing up. I mean, like she's my mom in a way. There's like some kind of a weird love thing, but I am very guarded and it's not the same relationship anymore. So when she went through that big explosion of emotion, it kind of brought me back down into this like, oh, I don't trust my dad again because my I thought my sister was experiencing trouble. Then I was like, I knew it. This was going to be a bad idea, and that confirmed it. Then shortly after that, I went to college, really focused on my studies, got so busy that I ignored everybody. It was just a really heavy, dense education, and I was like at school all hours and then working at the same time. So I was never
Mhm.
around or home, and maybe that was like my escapism. And then I met my ex-husband at that same time, and
Oh, okay.
he really like brainwashed me to validate my mom's feelings, and because he still had unprocessed trauma about his parents. So I trusted him so much, and again then entered into a marriage that was kind of like my mom. Like, it was just this gaslighting, making me feel small as a human, kind of bullying me, putting me down a lot. So I was in a very weak state, and I had suffered my mental illness. Like, I had my two daughters really close in age and really young, and so I think I had a bit of postpartum and then all this unprocessed childhood stuff, and it really just, like, came over me, and I didn't wanna, like, get outside. I crawled into bed, I just slept so many hours. I would probably watch endless TV. Like, it wasn't probably fun being married to me either. I probably wasn't being the best wife that I could, but I was
But there's no
struggling.
excuse for
Yeah.
alienating your kids.
No.
When
No.
you how old were you when you figured out the truth and learned the term of parental alienation?
28. I'm like, I could write down the date. February 26th, 2018. It's
Wow,
like,
so it was 10 years after you met your dad in person that you figured out parental alien. Okay, because of how it was for me, I'm always so curious to ask other people, like, when you learned the term, you figured everything out, what did you do? What was that like?
I started, like, posting quotes and things like crazy. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, am I the only one out here in the world? Has anyone else experienced this?" Like, I felt totally divided away, like, from society, like, that I was
Mhm.
not human, that I was, like, some alien from another planet looking in on this world of, like, disbelief of this happened, and it happened again and again, 'cause
Mhm.
there's so many parallels, and it's messy. It was me on the ground, on my knees, like, banging my hands, like, "If
Yeah.
there's a God, why? Why is this
Mhm.
happening?" And to innocent, beautiful souls, and, like, nobody deserves this, and I just spiraled again. So I was, like, in this depression state. I
Mhm.
went for, like, intense therapy, like this 8-week long thing, and then on top of that, more, like, everything you can imagine. I
So
just say yes. I'm like, if a door opens and it's like, "This could heal you, this could make you understand, this," I'm like, "Yeah, let's go."
Yeah.
So I've, like, done really, like, hippie things, really, like, out there things, and really normal stuff. Like, I've just been like, I have something to prove, that, like, this doesn't have to affect me. I can,
Mm.
be successful. I can live my dreams in my life still, even through this trauma and this pain. At the time when I found this all out, my mom was going to prison, and my ex left me, and we were divorced, like separating, divorcing. And then parental alienation, and my dad, and that whole childhood thing. And a lot of it was because this therapy was digging into your childhood, learning about childhood development and your brain and how that all interacts. And so we had to write and reflect a lot on things we would remember. And so it just started to like really flow out of me. And then shortly after doing a lot of healing, just this big thing happened, and then I was like, we cannot be together, like we need to separate, this is not healthy. And he always said like, I'm going to take the kids, like you will never see them ever again, like since my oldest was like 5 days old.
Oh
He
my god.
like ripped out all my stuff out of our closet, shoved it in black garbage bags, and was like, "I'm buying you a one-way bus ticket and you're never gonna see your daughter again," while he's holding my newborn baby. And I'm like, "Give me my baby." Like, it was just awful. So it was like
Can't
that
imagine that the panic
all
that would be
yeah,
it was I'm so
all of the
sorry.
and so I always lived like this, on pins and needles. And so eventually, like, I was like, I can't, like, I need to heal. We need to separate. And then he didn't let me see my kids. He like made up a big lie, got this court stuff dealt with. He's very wealthy. He had the power and the tools to do that. And I tried to prevent in every way I could, and getting a lawyer myself and using up every money and penny that I had. And yeah, I just feel like it's unfair for parents. And then when you grow up and you're told a different story, so like I know for a fact my daughters are told,
Yeah.
because they've been like, my sister ran into them recently, like, is mom okay, is she getting the help she needs, like, so
Oh,
there's always this narrative of like, your
sorry.
parent is not well, they don't love you, they don't want to be there, they can't take care of you. And it's so false. So when you're brainwashed and you're so young hearing that, but you can't hear the other side ever, not once, you just think like, well, this person's healing me. They have my best interest. They're gonna protect me. Survival. That's how it works in this world. And so then you're clinging to your abuser, just like, and then you have to trust them, but you're like, it's not lining up. This is not a loving like, you can see and feel it as a kid, and you grow up and you feel like, I know now what love is like. And hanging out with my dad, it's really funny because this weekend my sister was like, when you come visit me at home, we fight, like back in Winnipeg, and my mom is there. She's like, we fight way more. And she's like, it's really toxic. And then it was the first time for her going out there to see my dad in like BC, and he's like in the middle of the bush, and it is so quiet and peaceful and Canadian. And um and it and she's like, we're not fighting as much, like it doesn't feel as stressful. And she was like really calm going back home. And she literally messaged me a bunch of like people at the university she works with to get them to start doing research on parental
Oh
alienation and
my
get a
god.
study going.
Let's do
And
it.
so she like just like jumped. And I just like felt like this is the moment that she needed, probably, just to
Mhm.
experience that, because she never has said those things before. And I was like, I notice it. I do too. I come home and my husband says, night and day. When you come home from your mom's, kind of, it's not good. When you come home from your dad's, you're happy and really calm. So it says a lot when you're in a space with people that don't make you feel good, than as opposed to where people make you feel authentic and validated and loved and cared for. So you'll always know the truth. It's just when you start to become aware. Now the thing is, this happens to kids and they're young and they're easily manipulated. And so was I. And I didn't even understand an ounce of anything. How do you go off it, especially when it's 3 years old and you don't have memories? Like, if I did not have that family saying that that moment, that pivotal moment, I would have never looked further, like sneaking in my mom's bedroom, scouring all of her albums, trying to find pictures of this man. She like got rid of them all, but there was some family, like his sister, his brother, pictures of us as babies. So I just always thought it was like friends or something. Like, I didn't know who the person was, but now I know. And then I found letters and things that my mom had written when I was a kid, and stuff about regret of following through with the birth of my twin and I, and like wishing that we were aborted or adopted. And it's crazy because like you
I'm
could have just like
so sorry.
left us with our dad. And like yeah, he was like, I would have totally just taken you, no problem. But I know she struggled a lot with her mental health, with different addictions and chronic pain and different stuff. So, like, I'm not excusing it, and she should have got help, but she never went to a doctor or dentist a day in my life growing up, and I went like the opposite. Basically, I just like took her, the poster child, and I said what not to do, the
Me too.
opposite.
It's awesome in a way. Sometimes I find myself
Yeah,
going too far the other direction. I need to bring myself back to the middle,
yeah,
but wow. Oh my goodness. Um,
yeah.
so Chantel, there are a lot of people that realize the truth too late and their targeted parent is already passed away, or a lot of people who realize the truth and they don't have a successful reconnection with their parent. I think that you and I seem to be fortunate in that we have been able to
Yes.
reconnect with our dads. Do you think we could talk about that? Because I think it's something that I haven't really heard many people talk about how confusing it is at first and the different
Yeah.
emotions. It does take time. And even now, for me, still things come up. It's a severed, really complicatedly severed bond. And when you try to rebuild that, I mean, I think that we could have a long discussion about it, but
Yeah.
what was that like for you, especially at the initial stages to now?
Okay, this is like going to be big background. So, death is a big experience in life, and I am a death worker. That's part of my job. I work with people in their final moments, taking their last breath, and I try to give them an experience of like this serene, beautiful space full of love to hold them until they transition. And then in those moments, there's all those existential questions and things that come out of like, I screwed this person over, I made this mistake, or this wasn't right in the world, or I never loved my body and now I'm not gonna have a body, I'm leaving
Oh.
it. And just like really big things or like regrets or wishing that they did something different in life or things went another way. And so I get to hear a lot of that. And I do not want any more parents to be dying without reuniting with their child. Like it is so difficult for me to imagine that because that is one of my greatest fears.
Mhm.
So now with my ex and my daughters, they all have a very rare connective tissue disorder and they were told they have a 90% chance of dying before the age of 50. And everyone in my family lives to be 100 plus. So it was just like this math that I did. And this was like before I did all this death work training and stuff. That was where the depression came from. What if my children die before me? And what if now I'm in this position of what if I die before we reconcile? And it's very real because I am raising 4 stepchildren with my current spouse, and their mom died at 31 years old, and it's been a year and a half since she passed away. They'll never be able to see her or talk to her again, and it's very real to me that, like, this could happen. My children could have an aneurysm and that be the end of it. 10 out of 10 people are gonna die. It's gonna happen. We don't know when, we don't know how, but to make the most out of life every day until we are called home. And so I believe that how we die is how we live. And it's important to me to live my life fully for my daughters and for my stepchildren, that for their mom too. And like how she would want to raise her children, I try to contact like talk to her in some way, in a heart way of like guide me, because I love being a mom. That's the biggest thing. That's what I was born for, I believe. That was my nickname in school. I was just always like, "Need a water? Need an extra, feminine product?" Like, I just always was taking care of people. I'm a nurturer. I'm a massage therapist. I own my own clinic. So, the beauty of all of this and not having a nurturing mother made me be the mom that I always
Yeah.
wanted to have. And so I wanna nurture people through this experience, and even if they don't, they never got to reconcile or they lost their parent, to know that you can still make connections through memories. That is always, like, a piece of love if they have that. If not, it's, like, moving forward gently with your soul and, like, listening to where you need to go in life. And so, for me, I'm like, I need to share my story. I want to help reunite families and children with their parents that have been alienated. I'm doing some training to do some coaching for that with the Ginger Gentile. Yeah, so that really to me is just like, with my experience and everything I've gone through, I can give back and help others, and that even if your parent is not with you, there's no possibility, like, don't give up hope on healing. You can still heal. You can still find peace. And with my mom, like, I haven't cut her out fully, but I just am very guarded and have boundaries. And for me, like, because she's a very unwell person, I know she's not going to have that much more time left. And I just have all the rest of the time with my dad. And we're just making the best of it. I try to see him every month now. So it's been since 2018, I made the effort to go out and see him where he was living in Ontario. Then he moved all the way across to BC, so he's a bit closer to where I'm living in Calgary. And I fly, it's an hour flight to go see him. And I take my son, my 1-year-old son, a lot, and my stepkids. They take turns going. And we
Oh,
just go out there, and he's, like, such a grandpa dad, and, like, changing the tires, going shooting guns, going fishing, ice fishing, and just, spending, like, quality time together, and we don't get lost in, like, the drama. I mean, I ask him occasionally, like, "My mom said this about you," and I'm like, "It's awkward to bring up because I don't want to put you on the spot or whatever," but he tells me the truth. And my stepmom, like, she's like, "Hey, your dad isn't perfect. He's not like some saint, and he's made some mistakes along the way, but he really just wants to have a relationship with you, and just for it to be light and eat." And it is so easy. It's so easy with my mom. It's like, oh, just takes so much energy to try to, like, deal
your
with that.
soul
So
sucks your soul out of you. Yeah.
it's yeah, and that's why I got away, and I did threaten that as a kid. I was like, "Hey, the way that you have treated me made me feel in life. I don't want you to be a part of my life or at my wedding or there for my children. Like, I don't want you to know your grandchildren, and you don't deserve it." And it is funny because I would pray when I was a little girl, like, for her to go to prison or for me to go into foster care. That's how bad
Mm.
it was. And then and I just get really angry where I'm like, "Oh, I could have had, somebody who really wanted to take care of me and provide and who would have loved every minute." But at the same time now, I'm like, it would have been hard for him and as well, and maybe it wouldn't have gone the same way, but where we are at in life and the things we have all gone through and the processing and the healing, it's just perfect now. The relationship, like, nothing's perfect, but it is honestly perfect.
Has it been easy and natural to rebuild a relationship with your dad?
It's been very easy, very natural. He is me to a T, which
Oh.
is also very interesting because he's had no influence on my
Yeah.
upbringing. There was nothing until I was a full-grown adult, like 18 pretty much, and then 28 was, like, really the deep, deep connecting and, like, "I love you, I trust you, let's really
Mm.
rebuild this," and it was a maturity thing. It was part of my mental health, just part of the journey, and I hate that it took so long, and sometimes it bugs me the way he speaks about his health and his body and, "Oh, I'm gonna live to 70," but I'm like, "No, like, that's not enough time
Yeah.
together, like, be healthy for us, stay around." really want this time, and I keep having this vision of like, let's get property together, let's build some little cabins, let's raise our whole family, and I'll take care of you when you get older. I want to do that for him.
I'm so happy for you. Like, oh my gosh, I'm
Yeah.
so, so happy for you. I've had the similar feeling that there will never be enough time to make up for the lost time, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But I have to constantly pull myself back to the present moment. And like you said, it is
Yeah.
light, it is natural, it's healthy. And it's hard
Yeah.
sometimes to not think back, like, what could have my life been like? Who could
Yeah.
I have turned out to be? But on that topic, I'm curious. I have two more questions. So looking back now, how has your experience with all of this parental alienation shaped you into the person that you are today?
I think that if I hadn't gone through this, I wouldn't be who I am today. It really shapes me. I had to like go through a lot of healing and a lot of diving deep inwards and pulling out things, and then it made me open up to my potential, like why I'm here on this earth, and like brought me out of the rut of just kind of coasting through life and being naive. And like now I have a vision, I have a goal, I have something to work towards always. And I just am so grateful that now my dad is back in my life and that we have this relationship again. That was so important to me because that's the biggest thing in life to me, and I hope other people realize this and see that relationships are the key. That is happiness. Love,
Mm.
like, love your neighbors, that kind of thing. Just don't, stop judging. Just get out there and just share your heart and be true and work on those relationships. Try to reconcile, try to release those because it's fear, it makes you sick, it holds you back. There's so many negatives to not having good relationships. And then at the same time, like we focus on this in part in society where it's so materialistic. When I started to and heal those relationships and fix that, I realized like on my deathbed, I'm gonna have these people or like people now that were like all these connections are forming around me and people to give my special rocks to and someone that like will listen to me and that I'm like I don't want to think about all this hordes of money and cars and houses and couches and clothing or something like that's not what life is about. It's about giving and, receiving and communicating and, like, so many things, and it all has to do with relationships, and it starts with the relationship with yourself. That was the biggest one for me is, like, healing the relationship with myself allowed me to heal the relationship with my dad because I had so much ego, so much pride, so much like pulled over me that I just had to like lift this veil and
Mhm.
slowly over time and in different ways. It is a journey and it's like change. And I'm like, it's like only 1% of people I feel like can actually do the work and do that. So it's rare to find like I think of my mom or my ex like will
Yeah,
they ever change, will they
yeah.
ever I've heard other people's stories where the alienating parents on the deathbed and they ask for the targeted parent to come and you're like what, why
What?
would they want yeah,
My
and
goodness.
then you like feel bad for the step parent that's always been there like why are they asking for them, but like, it's fear, and then you're in that vulnerable space. You're like, I'm not even gonna be here the next day." So, like, you become your really true self, and maybe for them, in order to release their spirit, they had to just see that person one more time. But mind you, they did not admit to what they
Oh
did.
my
So even
gosh.
on their deathbed, they
Yeah.
don't say, like, "Sorry for this," like, no, they're like, "I'm innocent."
Oh my gosh, I can relate to so much of what you're saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like from what you're saying that this experience has taught you what's important in life.
Yes.
Um, the last question, which I'm trying to make the last question that I ask everybody if, during these interviews with former alienated children, adult children, what do you think are the top misconceptions that people have about alienated children?
I mean, I can only take a guess at what people judge or say or think
Mhm.
because no one has, like, come to me and said, like,
Yeah.
is the but, like, my half siblings, like, kind of were like, "Well, why didn't you wanna know us or be around?" Or, like,
Mhm.
"What was wrong?" And it wasn't like that anything was wrong or that I didn't want to. It was, like, safety. It was just fear drilled into me, so it was, like, me living in this high alert system, and then in society, they kind of teach you that if one parent has custody and one doesn't, then it's that other parent did something really must have done something really bad to lose that, and it's, like, never the case, or rarely, very rarely the case. Yes, there's some, like, really abusive situations and a protective parent, and, like, they might have to be ta a kid taken out of that situation, maybe, but to me, like, I hear this story a lot now, like, when I share, like, "Oh, a friend of mine this happened to," or something, but as a child, like, I think it always comes across that we just, like that we my dad might have just thought we didn't see it, we just didn't see what was happening, so to me, it's like, you're in a maze, lost in a maze, everyone else can see you lost in the maze. And they don't say like, "Hey, this is the exit," or guide you. They just talk to each other like, "Oh my gosh, she's gonna walk into that wall again," like, but don't say anything, and so it's kind of funny because, like, that's kinda how I feel about it, and then
Yes.
you
Yeah.
get out of this maze, and then everyone's like, "Well, like, duh, wasn't it obvious?" And it wasn't, and
And
you're
you
like,
kinda like, "Why didn't you tell me where the way out was?" Have you ever seen The Truman Show? Because I felt like I had been in The Truman Show.
"Yes, yes," I
Like,
would
everybody knew
say
what was going on, and they were watching, and, Truman
yeah,
believes
yeah.
that this is just his life.
Well, and I post a lot on social media about this situation, and family from my mom's side will see. And like a lot of them had contact and knew me growing up. They have never reached out to say anything like, "Hey, like, we knew about this," or nothing, like, they know that it's happening with my daughters, and they'll say something about that, but they won't like, it's the funniest thing ever was I was visiting my mom, and she was, like, so distraught and upset because she's alienated from my daughters now, she can't see them.
Okay,
None of my family can see them, neither can I. So
okay.
to her, she's like, "I miss my granddaughters," and so it's
Chantel.
happening, yeah, and she's like, "No, the situation that happened with you was different." But she said, "I feel so bad for those poor little sweet innocent girls." And I said, "Hello, what about me and Christina, or my twin, when we were innocent little girls and we still are innocent little girls at the end of the day? Like, there's still child part in my heart, and you told and she will not ever own up to it. So that's another part that I would say in this whole scheme of things, like, if your alienating parent is always acting that way, you will never get the truth out of them. So there was a part of, like, acceptance that I had to discover for myself, and I call it radical acceptance because it's
Mhm.
like I can't change the situation. I can't change her to say the right thing, to validate me. I can't get her to own up and tell the truth because she's her own person and her reality happened for her in her way, and she's mentally not well. I just have to kind of accept that, and it's like I'm not okay with that. I'll never excuse that behavior, but I know that that's going to happen, and to protect myself, I'm like I don't want to keep talking in circles about it anymore. I'd rather
Yeah,
just spend the time talking to my dad about how his day went,
yeah.
planning what we're going to do the next time we hang out, and just keeping it really easy. And when I
Yeah.
talk to my mom, it's just like, "How are you feeling today?" and what are you doing?" kind of a thing, and that's it. And she just wants to see pictures of her grandson,
Mhm.
and so I'm okay with that, but we're far away from her, we don't live near theirs. He sees her maybe 4 times a year for, like, a few days, and I'm there the whole time. So, I have control over the situation. With her, I've just kind of it's like it's sad, it's just like a pity part.
Mhm.
Like, I just pity her and her soul and don't understand why it
Yeah.
had to happen that way. Like, I think it's so funny because I see my dad and I'm like, I don't know how it didn't work out because they could have. made this work so much. Like, there's been so many similarities. Like, they both had seasonal trailer campsites, and it was the exact same trailer. And they like, it's just parallels that are so funny, and I'm like, "Well, whatever it was, it didn't work out for them." But if you separate from somebody, like, the biggest thing is, like, young, if you're getting married young, you need to know your partner, their history. If there is any alienation in the background or they talk about that, seek therapy, try to get them to reconnect with that parent first,
Mm,
figure that out before having children, before getting married, because oftentimes it repeats and it's like a 50% chance it'll happen again. So I really want to get these young adults where they're coming out of university or getting into university and just trying to say, like, are you aware of this? Like, because nobody is.
I know. I think that that's the way to solve it, that we can solve it. If everybody knew what this was, and this has happened, then I think that they would be able to recognize it. People would be socially shamed and educated about how it's so damaging. And
Mhm.
it's been like this for every human rights issue, you know? Like you've had to fight for the human right for every human right. And I
Yeah.
mean, I recently it's been like what was it? Multiple personality disorder, for example, people didn't believe was real until people
Yes.
actually started to speak
Studied
up
it.
and demand, yeah, and just
Yeah.
studied it. That's just how this is. And there's a huge industry behind it too. So obviously people don't want to stop
Mm.
money. But Chantel, is there anything else that you would like for people to know about the impact this has had on you?
It was
Environment?
dark. It was hard. It has, like, a huge effect on your mental health and your physical health. You shouldn't have to hear, negative things spoken about one parent at the other parent's house. You shouldn't, have, like, the child having to, like, giving them all of the pressure to decide where they're gonna spend their time. Like, it really puts the power in the child's best interest, and that's the thing at the end of the day. Like, put your ego aside and be there for your child, make the right decision for them, because they will grow up to not be okay. It will have a profound effect. It affected me and my ability to, like, continuing my education. I wanted to go to university again and do psychology and stuff, but I just, like, had so much going on in my mind and brain at that time, and I was depressed. I had suicidal ideation. I was hospitalized just because I couldn't break from that. I had anxiety really bad. They
Oh, very
said, like, I
common.
might have borderline personality disorder, but they said at the time, "We have to just say this so we can keep you longer to help you, but we don't think that that's actually." And then I got 7 other diagnoses where they said I don't have that. So I'm like, "I don't think that's what it is," but they did say that at one point, and it was, like, very hard at that time to live my life, be a good mom, and be a good friend, and be connected in my community, because I couldn't. I just simply could not, and I didn't know why, and I didn't know what was happening because nobody shared this truth, and then until I found out, honestly, like, a lot of the issues went away.
Yeah. That's what I was just
So,
about to ask you. I was about to say, do you believe that alienated kids will not heal until they learn the truth?
yeah. Yeah, I honestly believe that because I was healing before my separation, before I wasn't allowed to see my children. I did know about my dad. I did know that, like, I wasn't able to see him. I didn't have a name for it,
Oh,
and I didn't really go back to thinking about it because I was just raising my kids and trying to be in this abusive marriage with a really sick husband who at the time, like, he was in the hospital in emergency every other weekend, and we'd have to stay there for hours, and then the next weekend one of my daughters, and MRIs and all these things and beeping, and it was just so crazy. And then I just thought, what if they died? And that really struck me, and I was just thinking about my dad and, like, even other family members that I didn't wasn't able to get close to or have a relationship with, because I will also share, like, it might not also be just the parent. They're purposefully alienating you, not even from the other family, from their own family too. Like, my mom
mm,
had us in a prison, and it was like we
yeah.
didn't see anyone, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents. Like, maybe 3 times a year just for, like, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and a birthday or something. Other than that, like, it was just home, lockdown. It was very dim, very dark. All the curtains were always drawn. There's always, like, alcohol or nobody home. My mom and my stepdad worked shift work. Nobody was there. So, it was just, like, a deep loneliness too, a missed connection in life of somebody very vital to my being and my cells and me being here. Not even having the foresight, the knowledge of it at all, I still would have been cycling in that drain probably.
I
How
feel the
that
same
word
way.
came
Yep.
up for me, and I hate when people say, like, "We're gonna change the language," and that because it's not gonna work. Like, it really is the true word for this because it says it in itself, and you're like it just, like, boom, like, smacked me in the head, like, "Oh, okay, now I have a name for it," so I just researched everything I could, tried to take out books, follow everyone on social media who's quoting this or and it was confusing because there's, like, some arguments on other sides, and,
Mhm.
like, I'm all about balance, and I get the other side in some ways, but please just it is parental alienation, and I experienced
Mhm.
it. I am a child adult survivor, and I've reconciled with my dad, and that is the best case scenario.
Yes, we are both evidence that kids are don't underestimate your kids. Don't
Yeah,
underestimate your kids. And I'm just really, really grateful that you reached out and that we've connected.
me
And
too.
I hope we can do a campaign in Canada.
Yes,
Oh my gosh, I would flip to be able to come there. That would be so fun.
yeah,
It's a really important issue. I think. I think it is really an epidemic. There have so many things that everything has an awareness day, and
yeah,
a lot of that stuff, I mean, in my opinion, we already have the awareness of, but parental alienation is an issue where there really does need to be more awareness. And I think as the awareness grows, society will put pressure on the people that need to change the laws and need to change family court and all the
mhm,
systemic things that enable this to happen. But
yeah,
thank you for saying that because I know that there are going to be a lot of parents that watch this, but there are also going to be former alienated kids, kids that have just figured it out, adults who have just figured out that they were kids of this, and they need to know that they're not alone. And so the more people
yeah,
that speak out, it's just more evidence that this is something that is very widespread. And you're very brave, very courageous to speak out. A lot of people, it's too scary, or it's you don't want to put your negative parent in a negative light. If people might form their own opinions about why we speak out, but we know the truth, and that we know that there are millions of kids going through this still. I'm just really, really proud of your resilience and the fact that you've been through all of this negative stuff, but you're still so kind and gentle and
mm,
just, really like
mm.
honest, genuine person.
I
Um,
appreciate you saying that, thank you.
yeah,
And I wanna say, like, to you too, like, oh my goodness, I am just so beyond grateful for what you have done in this community, the voice you have lent, and sharing your side of things. It is hard, it is so difficult, and, like, you are beyond brave. What you are doing is, like, where I thought, "Oh, maybe I have to do something like this," but I was so anxious and scared at the time, like, "I'm going through so much, I don't think I have the energy to do it," and I'm just like, oh, you were like, I came across you and I was like, you are exactly what our community needs. And I just
band
appreciate your
together.
leadership and like bringing so many people together and just lifting the veil for so many.
It is hard, but I wouldn't be doing it without the people that I've connected with now. And I do want it, I do like it to be, we're all doing this, all create a social movement together. Um,
Yes.
and I just really thank you for being here today.